In this lesson, we're going to learn about the unit circle and how it applies to degrees, radians, and how we can even use it to evaluate trig functions. So let's first go over what we already know, which is the unit circle is divided first and fourths. And since it's a unit circle, that means that from our center, which is 0, 0, this distance is 1 unit long. And this represents 0 degrees or 0 radians. And when you go all the way around the circle, it is also 2 pi radians. And the ordered pair would be 1, 0. If you move 90 degrees around the circle, you would get to this point, which is 1, 0, 90 degrees, which is the same thing as 1 pi over 2. So that's like a quarter of the circle. If you go another quarter, this will put you at this point, which is negative 1, 0. I'm sorry, let's go back. This should be 0, 1. This is negative 1, 0, which is 180 degrees, and that is 1 pi. If you go 90 degrees more, this will put you at this point, which is 0, negative 1. That's 270 degrees, which is 3 pi over 2 units. So the way that it works, so we got, see if you go around the circle, this is 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2. And they're just reduced. Okay? Now let's say we cut this circle again in half. So I'm going to do half of here. And same distance the other way. Okay, so we're doing half of 0 and 90. That'll give me my 45 degrees, which is 1 pi over 4. So if I count by 45s, this will be 135. This will be 225. And right here would be 315. So these are my fourths. So this is 1 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and 7 pi over 4. So the way that it works is 1, 3, 5, 7. That way it'll help you remember the radians for the 45 degrees. And then the ordered pairs, because this is one, just think about the 45, 45, 90 triangle. And you're going to learn with the coordinates. The x coordinate is always cosine, and I'll put it right here in the corner so you'll remember. And the y coordinate is always sine. And the reason being is because Our hypotenuse is 1 unit long. So if this is x and this is y, when we do cosine, we always do adjacent over hypotenuse, which would just be x. That's why our x coordinates will always be cosine. Same reasoning for sine. Sine is always opposite over hypotenuse, and that means it'll just be y. So just remember, cosine is the x coordinate, sine is the y coordinate. So if you look at the 45, 45, 90 triangle, and you label it 1, 1, square root of 2, cosine is 1 over the square root of 2. And if you rationalize it, this will be the square root of 2 over 2. Same here for sine. And if you go around the circle, marking the 45s, the only thing that changes are your signs. So in the second quadrant, the x is negative. In the third quadrant, both coordinates are negative. And in the fourth quadrant, only the y is negative. Okay? And then we have our next coordinate. I'm going to go right between 0 and 45. And that'll be my 30 degree, which is my pi over 6. And I'm just going to go here and reflect it. This will be 150 degrees. And I reflect it here. This is 210. All of these have a reference angle of 30 degrees. And they are the closest to the x-axis. And in the fourth quadrant, this is 330. Now with the radians, this is 5 pi over 6. This is 7 pi over 6. And this is 11 pi over 6. So it's 1, 5, 7, 11. And then we have our 6. Oh, let me go back. I forgot to do the coordinates. Now, this is the 30, 60, 90 triangle. And let me draw it so you can see how it looks. So this will be 1, 2, square root of 3. So if we had to do cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse, and sine would be opposite over hypotenuse. And that's how you remember it. And then if you go in this coordinate, or this quadrant, the only thing that changes is my x is negative. And in the third quadrant, both are negative. And in my fourth quadrant, Only the y coordinate is negative. Okay. Then I have my 60. Which is pi over 3. And then over here, good thing about 60, we're going to count by 60. This is 120. These are further away from the x-axis, but they all have a reference angle of 60. So 180 minus 120 is 60. And here, this is 240. That's 60 away. This one is 300, and that one's 60 away. So that's the good thing. Oh, let me, right here by the 2 pi, I'm going to put 360 degrees. Okay, for the radians, remember 60 degrees that's 1 pi over 3. And at the very top, we have 2 pi over 3. Down here is 4 pi over 3. This is 5 pi over 3. So we have 1, 2, 4, and 5. And then for the coordinates, I'm going to erase this so we don't get confused. If I draw my 30, 60, 90 triangle now, the 60 degrees would go here and the 30 would go up top. So across from the 30 would be 1, 2, square root of 3. So now cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse, and this is sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So in the second quadrant, the only thing that changes is my x coordinate is negative. In the third quadrant, both coordinates are negative. In the fourth quadrant, only my y coordinate is negative. And I'll teach you some other tricks to help you remember. But for right now, that is how your unit circle looks with the degrees, the radians, and the coordinates.